around.
So we can spell it, shouldn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Schizandra. The Chinese is so Schizandra berry. I call it Schizandra berry. Um, the Chinese is Wuwitz. Wuwitz means Wu is 5. What way or way is flavor? I'm not really sure what Z means.
Is the first letter W? W?
Uh-huh. Woo. Woo way or what? Woo what's it? 5 flavor herb. The only plant, as far as any of us know, on the planet that has all 5 flavors in one. That's why you can't like pin the flavor down. It has bitter, it has sour, it has pungency, it has astringency, it has all the flavors, earthiness, right? It has savory, it has everything. And it has that like little sour zip, zip, zip. So this is one of our classic anti-aging. This is one of our classic, what we call adaptogens, which we're going to be talking about a lot the next couple weeks. Adaptogens. Herbs that restore the adrenals, the body, the vital life force. Okay. Well, you'll know what an adaptogen is very soon. Okay. So it's mostly an antioxidant and adaptogen, but it is also an immune tonic, which is pretty common with adrenal herbs. It is also a liver restorative, meaning we use it when the liver is damaged. You have damage to your liver from drugs or medications or chemotherapy or radiation, and there's damage to the liver. This is one of the things we can do to give to people. It's the only adaptogen that really restores liver function, makes it kind of quirky. The only adrenal herb that actually can improve liver function. That's not a very common combination. It's also used a lot for asthma and allergies. But here we would say it's best suited for people who are weak. You have asthma and allergies because you're weak, you're tired, you're fatigued, but also your immune system is weak and run down. We could also say anything that's an adaptogen, we could easily say is a sports herb, meaning used often to improve athletic performance or metabolism in some way. So these are used a lot for training and weight loss protocols, all kinds of things. Okay.
Not a stimulant then?
It is not a stimulant from the American sense. It has no caffeine at all. Yeah, so we have to, when we're talking about all this rejuvenation, we don't use stimulants for it, like caffeinated stimulants. We use adaptogens or adrenal herbs. So they're very different. Okay. Okay. So for immune system, this is going to be really good for chronic allergies, asthma, chronic sinus infections. It does not treat a sinus infection at all. This would be more for chronic allergies and people that have like chronic long-term kind of stuffy nose and that. And it's also used for chronic asthma, which, as we know, right, asthma and allergies are very highly linked. They almost always, 100% of the time, almost go hand in hand. Whenever there's asthma, because that's an inflammatory reactive condition, there's always allergies with asthma. So, Okay. So we're also going to use this for people who have a depleted immune system, like people that have autoimmune conditions, people that have weak immune systems, people who are getting chemotherapy, radiation. This is probably one of my top 6 herbs for chemotherapy and radiation. It doesn't interact with any known chemotherapy as of yet. So it's what's also great about it is you can always use it no matter what. It helps keep your blood count strong during chemotherapy and radiation, like your white blood cell counts and your red blood cell counts. Okay. We'd also use it for any immune disease like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease, Epstein-Barr virus. Anytime you have a chronic immune problem, we're going to use herbs like this to rebuild your system. Okay. This is part of there's a classic Chinese strategy at hospitals that's often called fuseng in oncology hospitals. This term was coined in Chinese cancer hospitals. Fu Zeng means Fu is like your internal organs, and Zeng is like to protect their energy or to strengthen. So this is like, in essence, keep your internal organs in your body strong during chemotherapy and radiation. So this is actually one of the herbs in all of the original formulas that were tested in clinics and hospitals in China, and it's still used today. Most all of what we call the cancer chemotherapy formulas have Schizandra at least. They'll often combine it with other things too. Okay. Okay.
Can this be used unlimited time? Or
All of the adaptogens and adrenal herbs we'll be talking about for the next month or so, used indefinitely if you want. We don't ever have to stop them if we don't want to. I mean, it's good to like rotate and try different things, but you don't have to really stop them at all. Mhm. This can also be used for people who are completely depleted years after chemotherapy or radiation still, which we see a lot, right? This is something we see a lot. It's a year, 2 years, 3 years later, people have never regained their energy and vitality. Maybe their blood counts are still chronically low. People don't have to suffer. Okay. It is a little bit of a blood tonic, so we also use it for people who are chronically anemic or have weak blood, low blood counts. Okay. We mentioned this is a really good herb for liver damage. The only other adaptogen that helps the liver would be goji berries. Goji berries that you see sold a lot at the store, or wolfberries. The problem is goji berries don't really give you much energy though. So these are often combined in Chinese formulas very often. So we can use this for liver damage, people who are alcoholics, people who have damage from medications, people who are trying to prevent. This is also why we do it during chemotherapy. It helps prevent liver damage from chemotherapy agents.
So we should use it to mix our vodka in.
This is a great, actually, I'm not promoting drinking, but like this is a great cocktail herb. I use it a lot. Yeah, it is. Um, Yeah, so we do use this if there is, any kind of chronic liver damage. Really cool is we also use this for kidney damage. That's also helpful for kidney damage, stage 1 and 2 kidney disease, people who have um, elevated like BUN and creatinine that we'll talk about. So it helps it's in natural medicine, we call this a nephro-restorative, big term.
Would that be on the test?
Probably not. Probably not. So nephro means kidney and restorative, right? So this is the term we see used a lot in textbooks. It's also a liver restorative. Okay, different than milk thistle because milk thistle will not give you any energy whatsoever, right? This is actually an energizing, revitalizing agent. Yeah. We can use this on patients that have had a kidney transplant. Yeah, there's no known. We don't give patients that have had a kidney transplant many herbs, but this is one of the ones we know is safe for sure. Okay. Okay. Those are some of the easy ones. This is also basically an antioxidant to your brain. So it helps to prevent or slow the aging process of the brain. It helps because it's filled with all these antioxidants that have activity to the brain. This is one of the top herbs for patients who are getting radiation treatment for a brain tumor, which is very difficult. Causes a lot of damage to the brain and tissue. They try to minimize it. I use this a lot with patients that have brain tumors with really good success to help minimize the damage. Also good for people that have had brain tumors and radiation and have damage, and it's years later. I've seen it work even years later. It is totally different than how ginkgo works or rosemary for the brain. Those herbs actually increase blood flow for like dementia and Alzheimer's. This actually helps to prevent inflammation kind of directly.
Could this be used for people with ADHD?
It's also used a lot of times for ADD and ADHD. It's not quite the best herb for that, but it is helpful. It's just very good for poor concentration, focus, alertness, because that all comes from vitality too, a lot of that, right? So if you see somebody who is fatigued and has like a really foggy brain and poor memory, this is a good herb. It's highly researched in the elderly who have what we call just age-associated memory loss. So this is very good for the elderly for memory and focus. Anytime we're talking about the brain, the earlier you can help support it, the better. This is a kind of interesting note when we talk about side effects of drugs. They found this out like in the 70s. This particular herb, we should all remember this, I forget it sometimes, is good for drugs that cross the blood-brain barrier and cause more severe damage. Like also like a lot of abused drugs also do this, like LSD and a lot of things that make psychoactive drugs that make people kind of trip out. Acid. This is how a lot of practitioners in the 70s help people who damage their brain from too many acid trips and that. It actually detoxifies the chemical that is those drugs are made of from the brain tissue. It's pretty cool. So this is also an herb I use for vaccine damage to the brain tissue or nerve tissue, or if people are really worried about that. Okay. It is also one of the herbs we use with licorice when people have taken a lot of steroids and their adrenals are completely depleted or thrown off from it. Like you took steroids because of a surgery or some pain or inflammation. Not, it's helpful for a stroke, not the best herb for a stroke, but together with ginkgo, it's good for stroke recovery. Okay. Okay. Those are all pretty tangible. On an emotional level, it's a little bit mood uplifting. You'll kind of feel it when you drink it. In Chinese medicine, we say this herb is unique. It has a very unusual property that people have kind of asked me about, and we've talked about a little bit in class. In Chinese medicine, there's the idea that when your energy and vitality are strong, um, I don't remember the Chinese term, but it translates as jade screen. You have a jade screen around you. How are we going to quantify that term? I don't want to say aura. It's not necessarily an aura. You are resistant to EMFs and electromagnetic radiations and frequencies and emotions. So if you're an empath or you're an extremely intuitive person, this is considered a protective herb to help you balance that and not be so affected. So it's often used a lot by healers and people who are very sensitive and empathic people to kind of help them physically and emotionally both. I found it to be like really, really helpful. You notice when you taste it, you get that sour zip zip. And in Chinese, we say certain herbs that have that sour flavor, like astringe our mind almost. So what that means is this has a very like grounding effect. So you're more energized, but you're very grounded. It's like the opposite of coffee. You still get energy, but you feel more grounded and focused and balanced, more in your body.
Something you would be good to do a bath soak in.
I don't know. I've never used it in a bath at all, or foot bath or anything. Potentially, I would love to see what happens. And this is just one of our classic fatigue herbs for whether we call it adrenal fatigue or adrenal diseases or adrenal problems, chronic fatigue, any disease process where you feel fatigued. Um, it is also used a lot for night sweats, even from menopause, and insomnia. It's not the best herb for insomnia, but because it helps promote like a calm, balanced mind. So I will usually combine it with other adrenal herbs that we'll talk about, but you can do it on its own, but usually it's combined with other things a lot. Okay.
That's what it's called when you grow it as a plant.
You can grow this. Shay, I think, is trying to grow it. If you had a greenhouse, you could probably, it's a vine. It kind of starts to take over stuff. The berries kind of hang off the vine. It's not like native to America that I know of at all, but people can grow it here. Okay. So this is unique because it is a energizing adaptogen herb, but whenever I talk about adrenal herbs, I like to scale them. It really helps people. And what I mean by is like what I call like a farmer scale, meaning I'm going to take this herb, how much energy can I expect, right? So 1 out of 10, this is about a 3 out of 10 for adrenal herbs. 3 out of 10. Not super energizing, but you do get energy and vitality. These things take a little while for them to build. Um, but it also is never going to overstimulate anybody ever. So even the most sensitive people can take this plant.
Just the berries.
Just the berries. Mhm. Very easy to tincture. It makes a great tincture. It makes a great tea. Works really good as a capsule too, but the tincture to me is like my all-time favorite. A lot of other uses, but just leave it at that. That covers, I think, all the basic ones. Questions on it?
Could this be used for someone that had like that fell and hit their head? Like,
It's kind of, this would be more for, yeah, people that fell and hit their head, but people that, had some probably like real damage to the head or brain or inflammation, like more severe. Mhm.
What's the best way to take it?
So if you're gonna make like a cup of tea, I like to use a lot of it because it tastes kind of good, right? Um, there's some company when I was on vacation this summer that makes this and they carbonate it and sell it as like a sugar-free pop, which makes total sense. It's just like a carbonated Schizandra tea. One of the big tea companies makes it, but I've only seen it one time. That's awesome tasting as a tea.
Yeah, I've seen traditional medicinal now has like the detox medicine it.
Well, Schizandra, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so a tablespoon per cup or heaping tablespoon. The adaptogens, tend to be the more the better for dose. Yeah. Yeah, online questions. We don't use a lot of adaptogens during pregnancy, so I would probably not use it under normal circumstances. Really no contraindications at all. The only contraindication is we tend to not give it on the acute phase of an infection. That's just because we don't give any adrenal herbs on like the first couple of days of an infection. Okay. Other questions? No? Okay. Schizandra going once, twice, 3 times. Everything that